Greetings, internet world. You're in the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about Sharp Pins and their record, Balloon, Balloon, Balloon. They released that on November 21st. This is the third studio album for the one-man circus that is Kai Slater and his follow-up to 2024's Radio DDR, which received a ton of attention at the beginning of the year when Kai released the record on vinyl with 3 additional songs to extend the runtime. Kai is also a member of the trio that forms the band Lifeguard, who released their label debut with Matador over the summer, and Balloon, Balloon, Balloon was actually written during week-long increments between Lifeguard tours last year in 2024. He's the type of creative personality that is like a hummingbird. He just can't stop. Downtime doesn't serve him well, and it's mutually beneficial for his fan base. In an interview with Paste, Kai stated that, quote, getting back from a tour, if you don't keep yourself working, you can get into a pretty deep depression. From being on the road and having that movement, if you go to a standstill, you lose motivation. That's when I get the most writer's block. So I started this album to keep it moving after a tour, end quote. I love his approach to creating music, and there's lots to talk about within the context of this record, but I want to start with his impetus. Balloon, Balloon, Balloon is a record that captures the spirit of an artist who thrives in creating in the moment. His music is organic, unbridled, and relentless, and the result is a level of spirited authenticity that is a massive part of what makes his music so appealing. I think any musician can attest to the difficulty of sitting on a song for too long. Music is created in the spirit of the moment, and I think the longer that you sit on anything, the more difficult it is to capture that nascent energy. Most of the songs featured on the record were written and recorded in a matter of 20 or 30 minutes, which sounds absolutely mad, but he makes it seem as routine as filing paperwork while creating music that's incredibly special. There are times, though, when a song needs some time to breathe, and I love that awareness that he communicates later on in that Paste interview. He says that, quote, there is something to be said about if you're going for a certain type of thing, sitting on a song. I have songs where I will start writing it and then sit on it for a few days or a week and then find inspiration in the natural world. But for the most part, it's very much the first thing that comes in my head is the best one, end quote. This mindset carries through the entire process, utilizing a 4-track cassette recorder to give these songs a raw, basement-style sound that just bask in crunchy feedback and fuzzy distortion. If you're looking for clean, hi-fi production and lots of studio effects, you've come to the wrong place. His songs are immediate and cathartic, channeling the true spirit and freedom of do-it-yourself recording while tapping into a high-energy incarnation that combines so many of the sounds that broke through in the 1960s. The hard-hitting punk-sounding guitars of The Who and The Kinks, the sweet melodic sounds of The Beatles and The Lovin' Spoonful, jangly power pop sounds of The Byrds and The Yardbirds, and the psychedelic blue-eyed soul of bands like the Box Tops and the Grassroots. Kai blends these influences with the more modern sounds of the Mountain Goats, Pavement, and Guided by Voices. But more than any of these artists, Kai reminds me of Martin Newell, the force behind the Cleaners from Venus. Now, granted, Kai has a long way to go before matching Newell's prolific fortitude, but in his defense, he's only 21. And I think his approach to songwriting and the rejuvenated energy that he's steering towards Sharp Pins is the ideal recipe for a consistent wealth of output for decades down the road. A big part of that recipe worth noting is that he doesn't seem to be short on ideas. And Balloon, Balloon, Balloon is a record that covers a lot of ground with its 44-minute runtime. Slater handles all of the production as well as the instrumentation, except for a handful of tracks where Pete Cimbolo takes over on the kit. And you can tell that Kai's strength is in his axe, which is why this record is first and foremost a guitar record. I love that he's working with a 12-string and the record is teeming with infectious riffs that channel that signature Roger McGuinn sound, a sound that Slater describes as teetering on the edge of exploding. And opener Papa Fang Out delivers with immediacy. It features catchy ringing guitars, an infectious hook with great melodies, and production that's actually a bit cleaner than everything else here. I Don't Have the Heart follows, and it sounds like the Davies brothers joined the Beatles in the studio back in 1963. The album continues to navigate a collection of songs that all operate with an alluring sense of familiarity while also sounding like they've been beamed down from some cosmic radio frequency. It unfolds in what feels like 3 sections, with the first 7 tracks encompassing writing and production that feels a bit more approachable and driven by the jangle pop element, and concluding with Balloon 1, which the balloon tracks are more of just kind of like experimental instrumentals. The next 7 tracks find Slater working with more garage and punk energy and production that is much grittier, concluding with Balloon 2. Tracks like I Don't Adore You, All the Prefabs, and Fall in Love Again deliver an eclectic punk sound that captures the style of the Velvet Underground and Television, while utilizing shorter runtimes on hook-driven songs that funnel the influence of bands like The Descendants and Minor Threat. Tracks like these feel so complete despite the short runtime, but it's always tough to not wonder what kind of potential maybe a more fleshed out version of some of these songs could have had. The final 7 tracks take the record into terrain that is a bit more mellow, although it does open with Ex-Priest, In a Hole of a Home, and Takes So Long. Great tracks with punk spirit that extend the energy of that second section a bit. There's more of a folk rock inspiration on tracks like All the Shops and Stores Are Closing Now, Maria Don't. The strength of the album is that it explores a great variety of sound, and I particularly love the moments of hazy and hypnotic serenity that tracks like Queen of the Globes and Mirrors, Stop to Say Hello, and Crown of Thorns take the listener into, allowing this psychedelic effect to just wash over your mind. And, there's other great moments too, like the classic rock and doo-wop influence of a song like Talking in Your Sleep. Lyrically, Slater is a fascinating subject, and Balloon, Balloon, Balloon is a deeply personal record that ponders themes of life in the abstract. He has a unique way of seeing the world, creating vivid scenes that border on honestly tapping into the absurd while staying grounded in honest reflections of the human experience. He can be a bit abstruse, but that's part of his charm, and it leaves his words open to an array of interpretation. My favorite is Queen of Globes and Mirrors. The title alone begs for the type of conversation that ends with the sun coming up. He sings, Queen of Globes and Mirrors, lust will get you yet. If you had to bet between me and your heart, Queen of Globes, she's nearer, open my heart. Off the tongue of her cigarette, I loved her, but I don't forget. And he goes on to sing, close the garden gates, nymphos smile and June resides to the core of my mind's eye, and I don't want you to see me when I'm alone. By that time, you'll know my mind is gone. The imagery is wild, and these laconic lines are fully loaded. The queen, a nebulous creature that could represent any number of personal demons. She could be a reflection of the countless duplicitous forces in the world that just tell us to smile, that it's for our own good. Any number of things. She's alluring like a vampire that you just can't resist take a bite from your neck. Elsewhere, he does feel a bit more direct, like on Stops to Say Hello, where he sings, stop to say hello, top the millions of cowards racing for the prize, can't seem to open their eyes. Kai isn't afraid to use his music as a conduit to levy his criticisms of the world. It's an integral element of the music that inspires him, I'd say. And he does it in a way that's not accusatory. Rather, his words are reflections that urge the listener to do the same, to look in the mirror before pointing fingers. His voice is the perfect tool to channel this sense of discontent and yearning as well. It's vibrant and cheerful sounding through these arrangements that delve into somewhat saturnine thematic territory, another cornerstone of that 60s power pop sound. He has a great falsetto, along with superb harmonies that work throughout the record, and I appreciate when he chooses to let all of that stand out in the mix just a bit more. Overall, this record is interesting from its predecessor. I think it's definitely a little more raw. I think it's a little more experimental with a number of the tracks that do feature those shorter run times. I think there's only one track on Radio DDR that comes in under 2 minutes, and there's a handful of them on Balloon, Balloon, Balloon. Again, it's a double-edged sword, getting back to that idea of just making a song in the moment, and just whatever happens within that minimal time frame, record it, it's done, that's it. I think for any artistic medium, you could spend your entire life working on something and not perfect it. The big question is always, when is it finished? And I think ultimately that leads all art to be ephemeral to some degree. Even if you spent your entire life working on a painting, let's just say you add one brush stroke to it a day, hundreds of years down the road, that painting still is only that pocket of time that you were alive, which in the grand scheme of things, as we look back in time, a lifespan it's like the blink of an eye, and it's becoming even shorter as we move further into the future. So while it's easy to maybe criticize some of these tracks for the short runtime, for maybe not offering as much as they could, who's to say that they weren't finished, that they weren't complete? And I love that about Kai and his discretion when it comes to creating music. He has the ability to just say, that's it. That is the reflection of this moment that I'm looking for. This is what was on my mind. This is what I was feeling. And I think that despite its imperfections, there's something that really gives all of these tracks a lot of power being created in that regard. I don't know how I feel. Radio DDR is an exceptional record. It's really a phenomenal effort. I don't think Balloon, Balloon, Balloon is quite as good, but it is a damn good record still, and it has a lot to offer. And I think it's a really fun experience from a guy who is, I don't want to say that his style is derivative. I've read that a little bit. I've heard, the few people that are not fans of the guy, but I think it goes back to, again, any moment in time where there's a creative movement. I feel like that was one of the big things when I was in college and doing the English lit side of my studies. I loved hearing about groups of authors in certain periods of time. And, you even look at artists, musicians, I feel like are, there's been moments where a lot of musicians have been tight. They have been collaborative, especially during this time period. You think about how many artists work together in different outfits. Just this idea of throwing ideas off of one another. And while Kai may not be in the room with all of these guys, shoot now, 60, almost 70 years ago, closing in on that time frame, it's pretty crazy. But I feel like he may not have been in the room, but in spirit, these great artists, especially the ones that are no longer with us, are channeling that energy. And I feel like Kai is a guy that wrong time and wrong place, but thankfully he's here for us. And I think that he is taking the traditions of rock and roll at that moment in time and pushing them forward in his own way, with his production techniques, with his writing techniques, and just with every element that he brings to a song. So I hope you guys enjoy this record. I'm going to give this thing an 8 out of 10. Can't wait to go pick it up at Zia Records. Support your local record stores, and I hope you enjoy this record. Hope you find this review helpful as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2025. If you're feeling generous, drop a super chat, hype this video, and I appreciate all of you. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.